Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be featuring what was listed as one of the strongest Tech Tree ships on my own list earlier this year, and that is the Tier 9 Kitakaze, the IGN gunboat that has absolutely fantastic firepower. The matchmaking is full Tier 9, and one of the reasons I actually feature this replay is because, well, I actually start this game off by making a fairly large mistake. Kitakaze, of course, is a great gunboat, and you want to fight other DDs, you want to pick fight with enemy DDs whenever possible. You have enough concealment to easily be able to push into objectives. Looking at the minimap now, though, the minimap, my team's positioning looks pretty fine. I got a Donskoy, a Kitakaze, and an Ibuki. Now the FDG is of course Hydro and Brawling, so I expect him to push in. Donskoy probably gonna radar, at least I would assume, that's what makes sense. So at this point, I am under the assumption that, well, I have a lot of backup. In fact, if you look at the minimap in the bottom right, you can see that my entire team is looking like they're gonna push up and support me. I request support, just to make sure they realize, yes, I do in fact want their help, and the Donskoy radars. I instantly smoke up because I see the Friesland on the minimap. Friesland's hydro is of course 5 kilometers, but as long as you sit outside of that hydro and you have the advantage of someone else providing you vision, you can easily smoke up and just absolutely farm him. Friesland is normally a fairly good contestant against the Kitakaze, but if you get a straight up fight, basically where he doesn't have the smoke advantage, you will beat him with your health and firepower advantage. This is where I just realized how quickly a game can turn. I was focused on shooting the Friesland, and during that time, look at my team. They all turned away. Even the battleship, even though we've just established that they in fact don't have a torpedo destroyer here, but the gunboat DD, even the battleship has turned away. And you can see how the cap isn't being reset. They have constant contribution even though I'm shooting the Georgia. So I know for a fact the Friesland is pushing in, and there's a chance the Donskoy is pushing into radar as well. So I'm gonna be forced to leave the smoke before I just get killed because, well, no one else from my team is providing any vision or any help, and they're too far away to help. So this was a mistake. The Friesland is pushing in. I basically left the smoke at the very last moment, and I instantly start focus firing him, hoping my team will also shoot him. But if you might notice, there's basically no real shells coming in yet because they're all focusing on the Georgia. Only now the smoke starts, or the shells start falling in, but it's too late as he's already smoked up. Now this was a mistake in the sense that I expected my team to do the smart thing. I expected my Brawling Kitakaze to push in with me to prevent the Donskoy from getting here. Basically get into a position where his guns can do the most damage and support me. I perhaps expected the Donskoy and Ibuki to play a bit more aggressive than they are, and this was a mistake. You need to look at your teammates' position as much as you look at the enemy's position. Your teammates will not always, in fact, they will rarely do the smartest thing. More often than not, your teammates will do the absolute worst decision, like in this case. Instead of pushing into a cap where the Kitakaze could do massive damage to everyone, he instead decided to hump the border, which cost me almost all my health. But this is something I should have noticed earlier. I should have paid more attention to my own teammates' position instead of focusing on the enemies and just hoping that my team would do the right thing. Because as has become quite prevalent in World of Warships, your team will honestly quite rarely do the right thing. They keep doing the terrible moves over and over and over again. So this has basically become, don't just look at your enemy's positions on the minimap when you're playing a group, trying to push into objectives. Look at your teammates as well. In this case, my team has honestly some of the worst positions imaginable. They've all parked behind the A Island North, where they can't shoot the cap, and they can, well, they honestly they don't have any influence on the map. My team, on the other hand, is here sitting on the border, and I have an Izumo sitting in spawn. A Donskoy is actually, this Donskoy right here is zoning me out of both C and B, because he's sailing in between the two objectives in the middle of the map on Okinawa. Now, this should be a very dead Donskoy, but my team is apparently struggling to focus fire and kill him off. So this is already turning out to be a really rough start to this game, because regaining positioning once your team gives it up is so very difficult. It's so very difficult. DDs, at least, especially a Kitakaze, can do it to some extent because it can fight other DDs so well. It can farm battleships, torp them, and it can even farm cruisers. So in that case, I am playing the right ship for the job, and that is the gunboat DD. They don't need me down south because there's no torpedo threat. So the Donskoy Friedrich, once they finally realize they can just push in and take the cap, they will go and take the cap. However, B will need my help, and that's what I'm focusing on. Donskoy is sailing away, so I decide to smoke up and start putting pressure on the rune, because no one else seems to be putting any pressure on him. Donskoy actually pops a radar. I assume he was detected, and that's why he popped it, and he actually catches the Z46. It turns out this Donskoy is actually a better player, and that's why I was very surprised to see such a clutch radar timing. I'm expecting to be hydroed here. I'm ready to basically accelerate out of the smoke and leave it, but you see I'm actually not being hydroed. So this Z46 was pushing into my smoke without using hydro. I assume his goal was to torpedo me, so I accelerate a bit just to make sure, and that's exactly what it was. People always have some sort of plan, so keep that in mind. Rarely, I mean, yes, you see a lot of very, very dumb moves quite often, but rarely do they just do full broadside turns in front of your smoke just because they feel like it. They have something in their back pocket. In this case, his goal was to torpedo me and get rid of me. So, especially with such a small smoke, I only had 2 puffs, it was better to just leave it, play it safe, than risk sticking around. My team has now started pushing in. C should be secured quite easily because, well, once again, they have such an overwhelming advantage there. However, B is probably where I will be needed. I'm not sure how the Fletcher will manage because he is within radar range of the Donskoy. If you look at the minimap, you can see the Donskoy might in fact radar the Fletcher, and there is the radar that I kind of expected. I stay angled in though, I slow down a bit to maintain distance to the rune because I don't know how long this radar is going to last. The radar runs out, so now I know the exact radar timing, and the Donskoy gets killed. So this will be a pretty easy cap to secure for my team. I do believe the Jean Bartinet is going to die, so this game is very much far from being over. My Friedrich Grosse for some reason is not... He's kind of running away from this Friesland smoke by the looks of it. I'm not entirely sure why, because Friesland of course does not have torpedoes, he's only a gunboat, and the best way to deal with the Friesland is just rush him down as a battleship. He's not gonna, especially against the BB, he's not really gonna do that much damage, and you can just bully him out of the smoke. Friesland, unlike most DDs, is the easiest destroyer to rush down in the smoke. So that means we do get C, and the rune is being forced back, so we are going to get B. We might even get A. And this is something we really need, because if we look at the points, we're 277 to 550. We are down a huge amount of points. What I want to do is go and farm damage, go land some torps, but I am worried about this Yugumo in the north. I'm also worried about my Udaloy sitting stationary in a smoke, shooting. The Yugumo, that would make a very, very juicy target for the Yugumo. I dropped preemptive torps on the Friedrich Grosse, who looks like he's pushing in, but my Fletcher is doing something very questionable indeed. And it looks like he's actually rushing in towards him. And I hope he's not going to get himself spotted. I have the feeling that he's actually going to get himself spotted. So at this point, the Friedrich Grosse looks like he's turning out as well. So I decide, you know what, it's better to just smoke up and start farming and hope for the best. The Fletcher pops his own smoke as well because he actually managed to get himself spotted. So exactly what I was worried about happened. The Fletcher was so eager to land torpedoes that he went too close. And now both my DDs might even be sitting in this Friedrich Grosse Hydro. That's kind of what I meant though. Expect your teammates to pull off the worst possible move. My Fletcher could have just patiently waited for my torpedoes to travel and see if we got any hits, but he was so eager to land his own torps that he would instead rush in there, get himself spotted, get himself zoned out. And meanwhile, the Aegir is pushing from the other flank. I would assume that's also a potential Hydro that's pushing in. So my DDs have managed to put themselves in possibly one of the worst positions. The Udalo goes down, and I'm pretty sure the Fletcher will not follow too far behind because he's not reacting at all. So this game has gone from what I hoped to be an easy win into becoming quite the challenge very, very quickly. In general, there's no reason to go that close to ships, potential ships with Hydro. A general rule of thumb is If it's a German ship, expect it to have Hydra. If it's cruiser, battleship, even DD, all of them are probably going to be running Hydra. So don't smoke up in front of them like this guy does, or like both of those guys did, because the Hydra will get you killed. And now, just like that, we're down to a 6 versus 6. They have a 150 point advantage. I'm telling my Ibuki to get back because he's literally giving broadside to their entire enemy team. There is no reason for it. He's somehow getting really lucky, but of course in classic IGN cruiser fashion, his priority is not protecting his broadside, but his priority is getting his torpedoes off. I mentioned in the past that if they actually remove torpedoes from the IGN cruisers like Mogami, Ibuki, Zao and so forth, the win rate on the servers would go up because less people would try to desperately get them off while costing their own life. At this point, I am running a BFT build, not a superintendent build, so that means I'm actually out of smokes now, which is a bit annoying because the Sovietsky Soyuz is pushing right into the objective and we really need to hold B. Because if we lose B, we're gonna be in some huge trouble because we're already down points and we're gonna stop basically clawing in the distance. So I launched torpedoes, used my last torpedo reload booster. I haven't really gotten too many good torpedo reload boosters this game, and launched a second set at him. The goal is not so much to kill him as to do some damage, because full HP Soyuz is hard to deal with, but also to try to get the resets. We really need this cap. I'm trying to slow down, trying to keep the Friedrich de Grosse spotted. I hope that I kept him spotted long enough for my team to get the kill on him. I do get one reset on the Soyuz right before he caps. Friedrich, did he get away? I'm worried I didn't slow down in time, but the Izumo actually finishes him, so FTG does not get away. And I land a second torpedo on the Soyuz, which will be a perma-flood because he damage conned the first one. So I've gotten a fair bit of resets. More important, the Aegir is behind the island. The Yugoma just popped up, so I know where the Yugoma is. You saw him pop up on the minimap, and that's exactly all the information I needed. So now I'm gonna start farming this Soyuz. Getting as much pressure on him as possible, resetting the cap, making sure they don't get the cap for free. Note that I keep moving north, so I keep the island between myself and the Aegir, so the Aegir doesn't get any free shots in on me. Gunboat DDs can very much be played like cruisers, in the sense that you maintain your angle, you sail behind the islands, you dodge incoming shells, you don't have to have a smoke to shoot. But you do have to be very careful, especially since my health pool is so low after the disastrous start to this battle. I left the range, got an undetected. I do want to go back in and maybe get some more pressure on him, because that Izumo that I had, that full HP perk Izumo, well, instead of sticking with the team, he sailed into the enemy spawn and he got torpedoed by the Yugoma instantly. So we are down to a 4 versus 5. So this game is very much still far from being won. Soyuz pushes in. Note that I get targeted. At this point, is his turrets turning? They are not, so I know the Aegir is targeting me. This is why priority target is so damn useful. I know the Aegir has locked me on, so I'm waiting to see if he pops up on the minimap. If he does, I'm instantly gonna turn away. I'm already angling away, expecting the shells at any possible moment, because such is the information that priority target gives you. It allows you to prepare for situations like this. And there's the AP in the air. You saw that coming across the island. He actually only lands two or three overpens, not as bad as it could have been, and more importantly, I think my team will be able to finish off the Sovietsky Soyuz. So we are up a ship again. We're down points still, because my team is sadly trading lives at the same rate as we're managing to secure kills. And we have lost both A and C. So at this point, this doesn't leave me too many options. I have to play aggressive on A. Note that I could play defensive around A. I didn't need to secure the A cap as long as we had the cap advantage. If you have 2 caps and the enemy has 1, you are clawing down the points. You don't really need to do much than survive and play safe, and you will eventually win the game. But the second we lose caps, well, now we have to play aggressive. Aegir just shot, and more importantly, you see that he's going behind the island, and they have no one else providing vision of me. So I'm gonna use this island as, well, a smoke. Basically a line of sight cover, and I'm just gonna farm him over the island, trying to maintain my speed as such that the island hides me from sight at all times. Kitakaze DPM is monstrous. Kitakaze DPM at 5000 health with adrenaline rush kicking in is especially monstrous. We lose another ship, but we gained 2 in return, so the rune is actually the last survivor. I stop shooting because he's about to pop up from behind the island, but more importantly he's been forced away from the objective. My Donskoy is entering C, and I'm gonna push into A and try to contest it and secure it. Once again, even now the game is not yet won, because my Donskoy and Rune can easily get themselves killed. For example, my Rune has been playing super safe for some reason, considering how healthy he is, and considering he's had DD spotting for him the entire time. And I have no idea what the health pool of my Donskoy is. So right now my goal is to keep this Ege spotted and look for an opportunity. It's more important for me, for the team, to secure this cap than it is for me to try to shoot and get damage in on him. I do want to kill him at some point, obviously, but you gotta prioritize. When you're down this many points, getting caps gives your teams, especially if you die, it gives your teammates more leeway. That was me complimenting. I actually complimented the Donskoy because he's played it smart down south. He stayed alive, secured the objective, and his radars have been good. So I do notice when people know what they're doing, so to say. At this point, I'm still waiting to secure the objective. Ege will easily kill me if I try to pick a fight with him. I have no smoke, I have no speed. It's such a hard fight to take. At this point I'm waiting for him to engage a target that forces his turrets to move elsewhere, because Ege's turret traverse is not that good. We've racked up about 76,000 spotting. He's still shooting the rune. I launch preemptive torpedoes in case he tries to turn in. Looks like he's turning out. You see his guns are turning, and he's changed focus. So this is where I open up fire. There's multiple reasons, because if he tries to turn full left and turn for me, he's gonna eat my torpedoes. If he tries to make a full swing around right, well, there's also a chance that he's gonna eat my torpedoes. And basically he's turning right into my torpedoes if he turns right, because he wants to angle against the Donskoy, and he wants to turn his guns around to potentially shoot me. We'll see if he actually goes for it, or if he's gonna just try to focus the Donskoy. I'm perfectly okay with him focusing the Donskoy. In fact, from the team's perspective, that's better, because I probably just do much more damage than Donskoy does. I straight up farm him. I get a high caliber and a wither, and at this point he decides, you know what, I have to deal with this DD. He's absolutely melting me, and by doing that, he turns right in front of the torpedo and gets himself killed. The game ends, I would say not a very comfortable victory by any means, but we do manage to secure it. 215,000 damage with our Confederate high caliber. A lot of damage, not that many kills, only 2, almost no torpedo hits in fact, only 3 of them, and I think 2 were on the same target, the Sovietsky Soyuz. But ultimately Kitakaze, there's a reason why I like the Kitakaze, and it's the same reason I really like the Daring, and that is you are not torpedo reliant. You have useful torpedoes, yes, both of them can get some excellent devastating hits in with their torpedoes, but they don't rely on them. If you don't have good situations like where I'm being zoned out by a Donskoy or forced back by Frieslands, or just a lot of hydros pushing into me, situations where I know my torpedoes won't achieve much, being able to just consistently do damage and farm the enemy with your guns is such a huge advantage. And that's one of the reasons I rate the Daring and Kitakaze so high, is because they have this flexibility that something like, for example, a Shimakaze really struggles with, because if he doesn't land torpedoes, he's not going to do any damage whatsoever. Team score wise, we do break 3.1k, which is obviously a nice sign. The Donskoy comes up second with almost 2,000 base XP, which is nice because his radars were actually very useful indeed. Overall though, the team did make this game significantly harder than it needed to be, but this game was also kind of intended as an example of how you can't just play around what your team, or what the enemy team is doing. You also have to play around what kind of craziness your teammates might come up with. It might look like the worst possible idea, but your teammates are still going to potentially execute that worst possible idea. And it might cost you your life. I almost sunk because, well, my entire team decided to run away for I don't know why. Normally when a DD goes in and pushes aggressive in a cap and spots, you try to support him. But I guess that's just some sort of strange Flamu logic that doesn't really apply to the player base anymore. Detailed report wise, Over 1,000 HE shells fired, the majority of the damage obviously from the HE, 116,000 with another 44,000 from fires. The torpedoes and flooding only gave us about 50k. We did get a bit of AP, but honestly not as much as I might have hoped. That's not to say the AP is bad. If you get to farm broadsides, the Kitakaze AP is absolutely great, but in this game didn't really have too many of those examples. Overall, a great showcase of just how good the Kitakaze is, because of it can play with low health pool, it can play without consumables, it can play even when you're not landing torpedoes. Kitakaze is absolutely one of the best tier 9 ships in the game, and there's a reason why I included it in my list of top tech 3 ships to grind. Let me show you guys my recommended build for the ship. Right, as always, let's start with the new equipment menu. Now normally you do want to get the hull upgrade first, that's the most straightforward one, and I would say get the gun range as soon as possible because the guns are great and the Kitakaze can basically pen anything. Torpedo wise though, you do want to go for the 12 kilometer ones, not the 8 kilometers ones, because these offer so little flexibility, especially against radars and such. You're not looking to devastate strikes, you're not looking to get multiple hits. Well, obviously it's nice if you get them, but that's not why you play the Kitakaze. No, you want situations like, for example, on that Sovietsky Soyuz, where you force him to use his damage con. And then once his damage con is on cooldown, then you follow it up with firepower, cause fires, and just basically burn him to death. So torps are very much a support tool, and F3 torpedoes are more around a full torpedo focus, and that's not really what you want to go for. Upgrade wise, turret and torpedo survival, you do want the improved speed, even with the new nerfed only 40% one. If you don't have it, get engine room protection. Faster torpedoes, because it is the best upgrade for this slot. Back in the day, AA guns was great, but that's been nerfed to the point that I don't use it on basically any ship anymore. Faster acceleration. Generally, my rule of thumb is if the rudder shift is below 5 seconds, I go acceleration. Because, and it applies especially to ships like Kitakaze, which spend a lot of time just sitting in the smoke farming, and there's a risk of being torpedoed, like the Z46 tried to come in and torpedo me, or you see someone pushing into radar push you, like earlier in the game. So I find acceleration just has a higher value for me than the rudder shift. Concealment, and finally faster reload on the main guns, because that is really where your main DPM comes from. With IFHE, of course, you can pen 37mm, and the threshold for most battleships is 32. So you absolutely do want to build around this fantastic HE penetration. Build-wise, Yamamoto is the best, not really that special on the Kitakaze. In general, Yamamoto is greatest on battleships because of the improved expert marksman, but I do have him here just for the memes in case I get a Kraken, because Kraken, Yamamoto, Kitakaze is absolutely hilarious. Build-wise though, priority target, last stand, survivability, expert, and concealment. As always, every DD build I have starts with, there are some exceptions, but almost every DD build I have starts with building survivability. After that, I really like BFT. In this game, it could have cost me because I didn't get well, the game lasted so long, but most of the games these days are so short that I prefer the 10% DPM over having an additional smoke later on. Also keep in mind, if you do get first blood, which actually happens quite often on the Kitakaze, if you are running Yamamoto, you do get an extra smoke or an extra of all consumables. So concealed reserves is fairly nice on the Kitakaze. Still though, BFT followed by IFHE, and I would say the last 2 points into Adrenaline Rush. In the last game, I got a lot of value from it. You don't always get that much value because you don't always get abandoned by your teammates without noticing. So, but AR is for 2 points. I think any of these 3 perks can be basically taken in any order you like. Personally, I prefer BFT first because it helps you in fighting other DDs, and being able to outgun other DDs is what keeps you alive. So in that sense, this is more like a survivability trait than anything else. All of this leaves you at a pretty juicy 2.4 second reload on your main guns, a terrible fire chance, but 37mm HE pen, and that's where your damage comes from. Flag wise, you do absolutely want to run the 2 fire flags because you have fast reloading, low fire chance guns, and these give a flat value of increase, which means you benefit hugely on the Kitakaze. Get the speed, get the faster cooldowns, get the detonation flag as you are a destroyer, and you tend to detonate a fair bit. After that, I like the increased flooding because it synergizes well with the rest of the Kitakaze. The AA flag is mostly because I have a lot of them on this account. The AA isn't really that impressive. You better hope the carrier runs into your 5 flak puffs. Kitakaze AA is most effective if the carrier is striking someone else, not you, so you can throw that 100% flak right in front of the planes. That's when your AA is most useful. For personal defense, very, very sketchy. And reduction in fire, mostly because it helps you stay undetected, because being on fire reduces your, increases your concealment, and it makes you easier to spot. Overall, that was my Kitakaze commentary. I think this ship is a monster. I think it's fantastic. I actually have no idea how I'm doing in it. I would assume I do quite well in Kitakaze because Kitakaze is just overall a very, very strong ship. Have I played enough to actually be on the list? Wow, I haven't played a lot of Kitakaze, have I? I guess it's one of those ships that I go to when I just really, really want to win. Here we go, Kitakaze. Yeah, Kitakaze is pretty solid. It's a pretty solid workhorse. Overall, the more you play it, the more comfortable you get with the arcs and the maneuverability, because the thing doesn't turn as well as most other DDs. But once you get used to the turning radius, and you get used to how it handles, this thing can carry tier 10 games surprisingly easily. Anyway, that was all for me. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will talk to you guys next time.